Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It's your Cape Sarah Cody, and we're keeping it geekly with our new guest, Asa Wheatley. We're here to break down Sagas of the Shield Maiden, Book 3. Also going to chat about Book 1 and 2 and everything in between. Asa, welcome to the stream. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm good. It's been pretty sunny here in the UK for the first time in a while, so...
Yeah, I heard it's usually gloomy and rainy over there. I have a couple friends from the UK, and it's always raining whenever I'm chatting with them.
Yeah, that's just most of the time, to be fair. It's been all right the last couple of weeks, but yeah, it's our warm is like 19, 18 degrees, and then it's like, oh, that's hot. That's
Celsius, though, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because I'm like, oh my God, that's like, it should be snowing there at that point. So, Asa, for anyone who is new, maybe first time hearing of you, give us a little bit about who you are and how you got into creating comics.
Okay, so I am Asa Wheatley. I am a comics writer. I have been into comics pretty much the majority of my reading life in one form or another. As I'm sure most of us did, I made little comics as a kid. I like fan fiction stuff, I guess, is what it would be classed as now, but you don't really think about it like that when you're growing up. And then I went to uni for film and TV and did kind of like some film production stuff, but really just kind of was brought back to comics and just my love of comics and my love of storytelling. Just kind of, I found that comics became the perfect medium for me, and the collaboration working with artists and stuff like that, because I'm not an artist myself, I'm just the writer. And so yeah, the way that works in comics is the thing that I really like about making stories, and that format just works for me perfectly.
I love it. And we were talking backstage, when I was asking if you had the film history, because I was trying to look up your past works. Yeah. And I think what threw me off is you didn't have the massive beard in your picture.
Yeah, yeah, that's not surprising. Yeah, it's probably super short hair, no beard, looks totally different.
So let's throw it back. What was that fanfic about? What TV show was? I'm assuming it was maybe a TV show you were watching at the time.
So I wrote. So the main thing that I remember is I don't even know how much I did of it. If I just kind of drew a couple of pictures, or I don't think I ever wrote an actual full length story or anything like that. But as many of us did, I loved X-Men. I grew up on the animated X-Men cartoon and reading X-Men comics. And I remember coming up with a version of the X-Men where it was 5 characters who all, I think it was Wolverine, Colossus, Kitty Pryde, and maybe Nightcrawler and someone else. I can't remember who the 5th one was. But it was essentially this story about how the X-Men had been taken over by the government.
Whoa.
And basically brainwashed into working for them. So they weren't called the X-Men anymore, they were called the G-Men. Because I was very inventive.
How old were you?
9 to...
That is a deep 13. Concept for a 9-year-old. Oh my God.
It's going to get deeper. So the reason, apart from the fact that those were probably a lot of my favorite X-Men at the time, but the reason that I picked those ones was the idea that the brainwashing or whatever that was keeping them in line, each of the X-Men that I had picked all had powers that would kind of help prevent it some ways. So Wolverine's metal skeleton blocks his brain, so it means that the brainwashing doesn't quite go through. Kitty Pryde phases through it. Colossus's metallic skin, kind of exactly like Wolverine. Nightcrawler's kind of phasing in and out of teleporting in and out, disrupts it or whatever. And so the idea was there was these 5.
I'm wondering who that 5th character is. I'm thinking okay.
I would love to know. I'd love to find it somewhere. If I've got illustration somewhere. But it had to be somebody who fit that idea that they were all kind of not 100% affected by it, and the idea was that they were gonna essentially stop this in big X-Men fashion, whatever that would have been. I obviously didn't get that far.
Wow, though that is such a.
But yeah, Yeah, what an
intense
idea for
concept.
like a young teenager to have.
Your parents are probably like, Asa, chill with these comics. Like, let's get you something a little bit more kid friendly.
Yeah.
So when you started working with film, what was some of the, the films that you were working on or maybe help creating?
So I made a couple of not great uni film projects. I tried to make a noir film, which was okay, but it was like the setting wasn't super great, and it was made by early 20s me who didn't really know what he was doing, and a couple of like random like horror bits and pieces, because horror is another like passion of mine. But yeah, stuff that kind of was more that I learned doing it. I never made anything longer than probably like 10 to 15 minutes, I'd say. And it was more just about learning and realizing that what I really liked was the like script writing element. And as much as I liked kind of having the whole thing come together, I knew I wasn't as good at directing. I wasn't as good at like editing or anything like that. Like visually, I find some kind of visual stuff like difficult to understand. But the writing side of it, I knew how to write a story. I knew how to write like what should be shown, but working that out, it's like trying to graphic designer at like the front of a book. I can't do it, but if somebody else does it and it looks bad, I'll be like, oh, I don't think that's right, but I don't know how to fix
to make it better.
yeah. So I think kind of from film, as much as I like the writing side of it, that's what kind of pushed me back towards comics a bit more. And comics had been something that I had loved like forever, and just had never tried. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll give this a go, because it's kind of like the same. It's the experience that I want from film without having to make like the film and work with 10, 15, 20 other people. I can just focus on working with like just an artist, maybe a colorist, and then like working with the letter as well. And everybody has very specific jobs and knows what they're doing, and it's all about how they're going to make my words look even better.
Yeah, I heard creating film takes way longer and costs way more money than a comic book, if I'm not mistaken.
Although comics aren't cheap either, to be fair. But yeah, film is massively expensive and I always found it's very reliant on a much bigger group of people. And at least in the indie comics like scene that I've found, pretty much everybody that I've worked with, from like pin-up artists to interior artists, whether they're doing 4 pages, 10 pages, everybody is like super invested in the work. And I think a lot of the time in film, you'll get some of those people, but then you'll also get those people who want to be like a step ahead of you, or they're doing X job, but they really want to be doing like Y. And whereas I feel like working in comics, it's a lot more like, oh, I'm the writer working with an artist. Those are our positions, and I understand that my words are this thing that I've like written, but I know that the artist is gonna make it better.
So what does that collaborative effort look like on your end? Do you like to have your artists stick to your scripts, or do you like to have the artists, kind of run with their own idea? I mean, we're here to talk about Sagas of the Shield Maiden, book 3, book 1 and book 2 both served as kind of like anthology. So you worked with several artists. I mean, how's that look like for you when you go to create a story?
So that actually came from the anthology idea. Actually came from me working on a couple of books previously, a couple of like kind of small horror books that I also did as anthologies. And the thing that I really liked about working on anthologies in general was the idea that I could make things quicker, because artists could all work at the same time. So I get 20 pages in a month rather than in 4 months.
So you would have all these stories done at once?
Kind of, yeah.
Wow.
So people will be working on them at the same time.
That's impressive.
Yeah, so it's kind of that. It's that idea that once I've done all the writing, I then just hand off to artists, and then they get to work on their pages individually, and then I get all of them back, and I get the experience of looking at like a plethora of amazing pages all at once.
Oh my God. It's like
but it
Christmas,
also
like
means-
every day for a
yeah.
week, it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. It also means I get to work with so many different people. Like working with one artist is great, but you kind of want to have that experience. And in indie comics especially, it's much harder to work on, as a writer, it's much harder to work on multiple projects, because for the most part you are, as the writer, probably going to be funding the project
Mhm.
and making sure the artists are paid and making sure the letters are paid and probably printing the books and that kind of thing. And so if I'm working on an anthology, then maybe I only get to work with this artist for 5 pages instead of 20 pages, but I get to work with 5 different artists for 5 pages each. And you can see who you gel really well with, you can see who's really great to work with, and it's a great experiment that way. And then also you get loads of different styles and variety. And so when I came to working on Shield Maiden specifically, I had one story that I had like planned originally. So the Bounty Paid, the one where Shield Maiden is like, she goes to the small village and she's like dragging the guy behind a horse, and they try and scam her out of her coin, basically. That was the first idea I had. That was like my creation of the Shield Maiden, that kind of combination of Vikings and Westerns, and that's where like the idea of the Shield Maiden started. And so when I went to do the book itself, I thought, oh well, that I could do that story, and I can combine my love of making anthologies with this same idea and make a bunch of stories all about this one character, and they just all act as different points of her life and different versions of her, but they're all the same character, they're all part of her history. But it's just building up different aspects of who she is.
She is a total badass. I mean, I read book 1, book 2. She is, what are some of the words I want to use? I mean, there's just so many. Powerful. I think that's ominous. I mean, if you see her on a battlefield, like you're better to run than even try to go up against her. She'll take it down all your men. I mean, what inspired this powerful symbol? This the Shield Maiden is a beast.
So it's kind of that is that Viking Western stuff. I'm super interested in like Norse mythology and Viking history and that kind of like culture, in both the idea of the kind of like raiding and the warrior culture, but then there is also a very like deep like protective culture and like farming and becoming like having a place to live and making sure that your like generations benefit from what you're doing now, kind of thing. And then the Western idea, like as in like Western films, idea of the lone gunslinger coming into town and being ominous and cool and badass, but not being somebody that is going to stick around for super long.
Yeah.
But is going to either fix or cause problems in this one kind of adventure, and then just disappear and be like a story, be something that the people who live there will always talk about and always remember and will be passed down.
Yeah.
And that kind of idea, but just with Vikings.
So, I mean, how much of book 1 and book 2 can we talk about? Like, what's spoiler and what's not?
I mean, I think you can pretty much talk about all of it. I think I'd be happy. I think if you want to go into it fresh, I'll try and warn people if we're going to talk about anything super spoilerific.
So,
but I don't think there's anything like majorly that will ruin the enjoyment.
I really liked with book 1 how you started with the Shield Maiden meeting up with Ingrid, and then having her kind of like pep talk her to fight. Is it Almid?
Yes, yeah.
Who was the king, inviting Christians to take their culture and everything, and how you knew this entire time. It's like you could tell, like, okay, well, Ingrid's not going to be able to stand up, but it was so cool because like the way the Shield Maiden was there to kind of guide Ingrid throughout the fight, and she's like, it'll be your sword that cuts him down, not mine. And like she lived up to that word beat by beat. I just thought that was such a powerful introduction to not only the anthology the book one, but also the character and just how the character is, like her presence, like just how brutal she is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of my favorite things to try and do, because obviously in both books, there are a lot of stories where the Shield Maiden is cutting people's heads off and ripping people in two, and that is her showing her like prowess in battle and her intimidating presence. But I really liked the idea of having a story where she doesn't actually really, like, you don't see her really do anything. It's about her, like, she's so knowledgeable of what battle is, and she's so battle hardened that she can look at this person who like Ingrid and go, okay, well, you're definitely not going to win in a fair fight, but this guy is going to know that, and he's going to like take the piss, and he's going to try and like goad you into it. And if you use that against him, you'll beat him, because he's full of himself, and that's why like he will lose. If the Shield Maiden was to fight him, it would be no contest, and the Shield Maiden would obviously win. But I think it's something it's more intimidating for her to go, look, I'm not going to fight you, because I'm going to get somebody who is physically and technically weaker than you, and they're going to win.
I also really liked how layered it was. Ingrid's like, I'll be a martyr, my death will serve a purpose. And then the Shield Maiden's like, no, like, he's going to use this to show how strong the Christians are. Like the like, not only like, it's chef kiss for how brutal this book is. I mean, you got people getting their face smashed in, that one scene where she's just covered in blood and she's just like, fuck. I was like, dude, God, I love this book. But also just like how like deep and just like you sit down there and ponder just like the events, and you really were able to kind of just really dive into a lot of just like human psychology, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also thanks to the fact that it is an anthology, that I get to do that in such a short space of time. Like the idea that I can kind of get to those things when it's just book one. Like normally you'd have to kind of like build stuff up a bit and wait until like you're further, like that first Shield Maiden story with Ingrid and her like giving the pep talk to somebody else and her not being involved in the battle, that like I think wouldn't work as well if the story was longer and it was something that was kind of like dragged out over a long period of time, and you didn't really know who this person is. But with the fact that it's an anthology, you read those kind of like 5 pages and you go, oh, okay, so this Shield Maiden must have some experience. I don't know what that experience is. And then you immediately go to the next story and you're like, oh, here's an example of that experience. And here's 4 more examples of all this life experience that you have, and how she kind of like builds that up, and building up her character in such kind of short spaces of time to just show like little snippets of like, oh, look, here's her doing this, and that's kind of what it means to her character, and so that readers get to build that while they're going through it as well, and they're not having to wait till issue 20 like 25, 30 or whatever to get those moments. You can come straight into it because you know the next story is going to be something that explains a little bit of her life beforehand or after, or what is going to or has happened to her. So
it's almost like Dragon Ball Z Kai, where they cut out all the filler episodes and you just get all the good stuff.
Yeah, you just get all the good stuff. Yeah.
So, I mean, we had so many awesome stories. The Shield Maiden and her mother was another good one, where we had just a kind of a flashback of her at a younger age. And there is a sense of urgency to capture this girl at this point. What exactly is the Shield Maiden? Are we able to talk about that at this point, or is that kind of spoiler territory?
So that's super spoiler territory, but that is something that is addressed in book 3.
Okay.
So making books 1 and 2. So I made book 1 without massive knowledge if I'd ever make another one. I had loads of stories, but I didn't know if people would want to read it. It's like Vikings and Westerns are 2 genres that I like love equally, but I didn't know if anybody else would have that same interest, that same crossover of wanting to read that. So I wrote the first book with 5 stories that I think fit the best. They were kind of the best examples of who the Shield Maiden was, and I did that where if that was it, I'd be happy. And then it did well enough that I was able to make another one. And from the first book, I wrote those main 5 stories, but I also had maybe like one line or a couple of line notes on, here's another idea for a story, here's another idea for a story. I had built up a list of story ideas that I really wanted to get to if there was an audience for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of did some of that in book 2 and developed some of the stories a bit more and changed the format a little bit. I still wanted it to be anthologies, but I wanted to be able to write longer stories.
Okay.
So in book 2, instead of 5 short stories, it's 3. 2 are slightly longer and 1 is still shorter. And so book 3 is like that as well. So book 3 has 2 longer stories. They're both about 20 pages each. And then 1 shorter story in the middle. And the 2 longer stories are going to be basically the start of like a timeline.
Ooh.
So one of them is going to be a story that is the younger version of the Shield Maiden, and it's going to kind of follow her younger years, as we've seen little snippets of it in the other stories, but this is going to be kind of a more chronological like telling of that story. Mm-hmm. And then you can also see where the stories before have come in. And then the second storyline is going to be an older version of the Shield Maiden, and kind of leading up to some of the stories in book 1, and leading up to like some of the events that have already happened that readers will already be familiar with. And so within that's going to reveal a bit more about Shield Maiden's history, and especially in book 3. So I had the idea of who she is and what she is from that first book when I wrote that story that you're talking about, where she has a kind of group of unknown warriors coming after her for some reason while she's still a child. And that idea I just kind of kept back until I felt it was the right time to like tell it, to reveal it. And for me, that ended up being book 3. So we've got 2 kind of stories that are somewhat mildly connected, other than obviously being about the Shield Maiden, that then will lead into this timeline version of making the book.
So what type of world can we expect with future, books within the Sagas of the Shield Maiden? I mean, we had a story where I don't know if it's hinted at or maybe it's just like theory, but they deem her unkillable when she is going to rescue a messenger of the gods. But in book 2, when she's saving the queen, we see her get attacked by the wolf. She gets scarred up. But I mean, so you're left with the feeling she might be unkillable, but maybe that's just tales, from everyone hearing the stories of the Shield Maiden.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to do as well. I wanted to give her this, as well as her being actually like amazing in battle. Mm-hmm. I wanted that idea of her sagas within the stories, amongst the people, amongst the like other characters, are that she is this like incredibly fearless warrior. Like, imagine if somebody had told you all of the stories that you read and they were like, oh yeah, all of those stories are about one person and that person's real and that person is coming to kill you. You would be terrified.
Yes.
Like, that would be awful. And so I wanted this idea of is it fact or fiction? Like, is she unkillable, or is she just so good that nobody's had the chance yet? But then showing younger versions of her, and like when she's with the queen, and yeah, you're right, she does get injured. But I also wanted to show the audience that she's not unharmable. Mm-hmm. She can still get hurt. I mean, she gets hurt in the story. They call her like unkillable because it's the idea that if somebody is just unharmable, it's not really interesting. You know exactly what's going to happen. You know how it's going to happen, and it's not very interesting. It's why things like the John Wick films work, because John Wick isn't like, he gets beaten up. Like, he gets the shit kicked
My
out of him.
girlfriend was so pissed about the Calvar or whatever suit. She's like, that's so dumb. I'm like, don't take away from this. Don't take away from it. It's badass.
You just need something. Yeah, but it's that idea that he's really good at what he does, but it doesn't make him immortal. It doesn't make him harmable. He's still in a fight. Something like when he's taken on 5 or 6 other people, someone's going to get a lucky hit once or twice. And it's the same idea with the Shield Maiden. It's that idea of just because she's really good at this doesn't mean that someone's not going to get lucky, even if they're not as good as her. And so it's that mixing of her own reputation and then showing the audience that there is some stakes, there are things that can happen, and maybe she'll prevail, and maybe you think she'll always prevail, but there's a story in mild spoilers for book 1, I guess. There's a story in book 1 where it is literally about her dying.
Ooh, all right.
So yeah, it's all relative to what the characters think and what the audience has experienced.
So I think right now would be a perfect segue. Let's go ahead and head over to the Kickstarter and see what all the hype is about book 3. I also noticed that Tango is involved on this. Big shout out to Tango. Was the hookup to get me Julian Shaw to talk about Recluse, the new spider persona they had for.
Cool.
Yeah. So when I seen Tango, I was like, okay, this is such a small world, and I was talking about that with Alex, like how interconnected the entire indie community is. It's such an awesome experience.
Yeah. And that's what something that I love about working on Shield Maiden especially is that I have been able to work with such a plethora of amazing creators. And being a writer, it's so great to experience working with so many different artists, and it's now getting to the point where it's like, oh yeah, this person has worked on this and this and this and this and this. And then if you look back, you're like, oh yeah, but all 6 of them worked on Shield Maiden at some point. And it's great to see those people working together again. And yeah, I just love it.
Yeah, we when I was talking with Alex, I was like, I have Asa coming on tomorrow. We were talking about Nick from Stone Cop. I was like, I have Nick on Monday. I was like, what a small world.
It is a weirdly small world, yeah.
So real quick, we have J. Michael Miller joining us over on YouTube. So excited for this campaign. Killer art, great people, and an interesting concept. Absolutely. And everyone who is watching, right here is a link to the Kickstarter. Be sure to check this out with us. Pull it up on your phone, pull it up on your tablet and your computers. If you're able to back, we would love to see that. But simply sharing this on Facebook and Twitter works just as well. Word of mouth is 100% free. If you're unable to spend a dime, at least give us some support by giving the campaign a retweet. We are looking at Sagas of the Shield Maiden Book 3 plus Book 1 and 2, the return of the acclaimed Viking Western comic. Currently at $12,620 of a $3,000 and a $111 goal. 418 backers with 15 days left to go. And Project We Love, congratulations, man. It looks like you just absolutely killed it on this.
Yeah, I was worried, as it always is when you launch a Kickstarter, but yeah, it's quelled my worries pretty quickly, thankfully. But yeah, it's been really good. It's been a great experience. Everybody has kind of come out and really showed the support, which has been amazing.
So let's go ahead. We'll check out some of these interiors down here. Oh, and we have some stretch goals too. So at 10,000 pounds.
We hit this morning.
Congratulations.
Which is great. So that will be a vinyl sticker that every physical backer will get a free copy of.
That's so cool.
That's been super cool to hit. And to hit it this morning, which was great. Great start to the weekend.
So this is an oversized book as well. Are all 3 of the books oversized?
Yes. Yeah, so because I wanted to do that kind of Western, idea of the kind of Western, I wanted to have the slightly longer panels because you get a lot of those really wide shots in Western films. So I wanted to kind of replicate that with those bigger panels. And it's also just cooler to have a nice big, oversized book.
Well, a lot of the sequential scenes too are so badass, and it would look awesome to see it in an oversized print. So right here, speaking of Tango, their work is first, and it is some gorgeous. I love just the paneling in this. This is next level.
This is amazing. So Tango and the JP Jordan is the colorist who's done an amazing job on these pages as well. And theirs is the one that's about the younger Shield Maiden. So this is the one where she experiences some kind of heart-wrenching grief and goes off on a journey of her own exploration, and some very interesting things happen along the way. Some maybe recurring characters from earlier books pop up. There's a little tease.
Damn it, Asa, let her be happy for a change. She's gone through so much already.
Yeah, she's going to go through a hell of a lot more.
And right here's an awesome say. So she's already fought a wolf. It looks like she's going to go up against a bear.
Yeah. Next time I'll have to think of something bigger than both of those.
And then we have the next story as well. So who is the artist involved on this one?
It's Megan Huang, I want to say. I'm not 100% sure. I've only ever spoken to them on email. That's the blessing and the curse of only working with people on email. But yeah, she's done an amazing job. So you may recognize, although it's a bit harder because in book one the character is quite stylized, but the character that's at the back of that panel there is the Astrid character, the Volva, the kind of like magician, who the seer who Shield Maiden goes to rescue in one of the stories in book one. So this is her coming back. Book 3 has a lot of recurring characters.
Wait, is that the messenger of the goddess or the gods?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So they're lovers, right?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
They are a couple, which is why she goes to save her in the first book.
See, I pay attention. Yeah,
no, that's good. That's good fun. And yeah, that's the story about them hunting a wolf in the forests just outside this small village.
Dude, Shield Maiden just has a thing against creatures from the woods, you know, wolves, bears. Get out of here!
Only when they go for her, or only when they're killing other people.
And then we have some of the previous books right here as well.
Yeah, some great pages from book 1 from Daniel Coloma, from Sammy Ward, all super cool stuff. Alex Schultz, this is the story that you alluded to earlier. She gets covered in blood at the end, which one of my. I really like this exchange as well that she has.
Do we ever see her wield the spear? Like, because she earned that spear, right?
Well, so that again. So what I tried to do in the first 2 books is allude to a lot of things that had happened before. So that she's there to reclaim the spear and reforge it into a sword that belongs to someone else, someone that maybe we'll see in a future book. But yeah, it's her reclaiming the spear, but she has her own special sword, so she don't need no one else's.
I'm a strong, independent Viking. I don't need no sword.
Exactly.
So let's go ahead and check out some of these rewards. Right here on the side, we have Shield Maiden Book 3 digitally for about $5 USD. Since a lot of my viewers, most of my viewers are from the States, we'll just go USD just to make it a little bit easier. The digital catch-up, though, $10. Holy crap. This is like, what? Has to be at least close to 160, 180 pages?
Yeah, something like that. It's about 40 pages of comics in each, and then there's about kind of 10 to 15 pages of extra stuff, of backups, of pin-ups and things like that. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. I wanted to make an option for people who maybe couldn't afford to get the physical. I know, because I'm obviously based in the UK and a lot of my backers might be like US based as well. I know that the shipping is the worst, and having to pay the same amount of shipping as you're paying for the book sometimes just isn't feasible. So I wanted to make that catch-up tier affordable for people who were just really interested in checking it out, but just couldn't get that physical book.
And then we have the book 1 physical for about $15. Fantastic price. Book 3 physical for $19. So this cover is super gorgeous. Who is the cover artist involved?
Tyler Patridge, who's been doing some amazing covers recently. I think they did some covers on Poison Ivy, and I think I saw she did a cover on one of the Buffy books recently. And yeah, that she's been doing some amazing work, and I was very happy to work with her, and the art she delivered for it is amazing.
And then we have For about 25 USD, Asa's digital comic collection. So this is every book that you've done. How many pages?
I've done. Let's say about 300, maybe.
That is one hell of a bang for your buck right there for just 25 bucks. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
It's packed with a lot of different stuff, horror stuff, weird fiction. I've got some crime stuff in there. So yeah, it's a little bit for everyone, as well as obviously the 3 Shield Maiden books.
And then for at 32 USD, the Shield Maiden book 3 physical plus prints. So there's going to be 6 prints right here, and we were kind of scrolling through them, but let's go ahead and get a little bit better of a look at them. So
these pinups are all in the book as well, and then I always do a set of A5 prints for each of the campaigns, so you can get the physical book and the prints in one tier. And yeah, they are.
Lane has such a distinct style. I love it.
Yeah, it's what I have really enjoyed, especially about this, like getting to the 3rd book, is I've done 5 pinups per book, as well as having the cover, and so it's been really interesting to see how different artists deal with making it something new and interesting of the same character, and still keeping it interesting for readers and for me to see, but still keeping it in the style of the Shield Maiden.
Like right here, this is so gorgeous too. It's not super insanely detailed, but it's like what they were able to do with what they were working with. It's just so mesmerizing.
Yeah, Ahmed Rafa, I think is how you pronounce it. His stuff is amazing. He does a lot of stuff in that kind of like retro dot work style, and he kind of asked me. He was like, "Oh, do you want that kind of?" He did all the line work, and then he was like, "Oh, when I color it, do you want the like kind of retro style or normal style?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, actually, throwing her in a kind of very pulp, like old school Western style, like coloring, but with her very badass manner is perfect."
And then right here we have the cover. This is gorgeous. Holy crap.
Yeah, so I always, because the covers are always such a fantastic piece of art just in and of themselves, I always like to include them as part of the pinup like print set, because I know I like to display them. So if we just want to display it but don't, it's kind of difficult to put an oversized like bound book on the wall. So having a nice print of it is my way around that.
You don't need to drive a nail in this book, just end up getting the print. The print will serve just as good. And at 50 bucks USD, we have the Shield Maiden physical catch-up, so awesome price for 3 oversized books, each about 40 pages of comic with, you know, extra pages adding up to almost about 60 pages each. So
yeah, they're awesome. About 60 pages. Yeah, 60 pages each. Yeah.
Awesome price there as well. And then we have the catch-up physical plus prints at 69 USD. And then
so the catch-up prints has prints from this tier, this campaign, and the last one.
Oh.
So I had some leftovers from the last Kickstarter. I think they might be. Yeah, there they are. Yeah. So it's the pin-up print.
Fellhound, yep, and Angela. We got Fellhound coming on later on this month to do like we're gonna be like an hour-long deep dive of And We Love You. Like we're gonna be going through each page and looking for Easter eggs and everything.
That's super cool. Yeah, Fell stuff is amazing, and yeah, everybody is always super great to work with. And yeah, so I had some leftovers. So for people who missed it and still want another set of prints, you can get those. There was a very limited amount of prints from book 1 that I think I put on the add-ons that people might have been able to. I'm not 100% sure if they've all gone yet, but yeah, those are the ones from book 1. So you can see that just from each book, is the styles of all the artists is so different, and everyone just depicts that main character, even though it's just the same main character. Each one is so different.
I love this pin too. I remember when I was first looking up this campaign, this reminded me of that meme where it's the guy with the blonde hair and it's like, yes. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, that is.
I really liked making the pin. It was just an experiment to see if it was something that people wanted, and it has gone down pretty well. And that's the kind of thing that I mostly also just made for myself. I wanted one, and so I was like, how can I make this so that I will get one?
Then we have Asa's full comic collection right here at about $80 USD, all physical. Man, some awesome prices on this.
Copies of everything that I've written so far. So yeah, but you can also get all of them individually as add-ons. So if there's just one or two that take your fancy, so Cody's just scrolling through them now. But yeah, if there's something that takes your fancy that you like the look of, you can just add one or two to your pledge. You don't have to get the full set. You can just focus in on those ones you like the look of.
Man, holy crap. So let's go ahead. For everyone that is watching, right here is the link. Be sure to back today if you're able to. And like I said earlier, if you could just simply put this wherever you can, wherever you can drop a link, Facebook, Twitter, word of mouth is 100% free. That works just as well. Asa, for anyone who might be on the fence about backing, if you had just a few moments to kind of address that, what would you like to say to them?
Do you like cool women with swords? Back this book. But yeah, I mean, it's as much as I can say that I like my own writing, and I like the character that I've created and the stories that I've written for her, and that I could write her for 100 more books if I can think of the right stories to tell. I think the real power of these books is the artists. All the artists that I've had involved, even if you don't read any of my words, it's still just a great experience to look through all the amazing work all the different artists have done, and it just exposes you to so many different styles, and each book has its own like grouping of different styles and different artists and different people who have worked on the books. So yeah, I would say that they're okay written and they're pretty interesting, but the art is phenomenal.
I will give it the geekly stamp of approval, and I will say they are badassly written. All right. Thank you. Give yourself a little credit here. I love it. I couldn't stop gushing over this book in the beginning. I had to pump the brakes when we started. I was like, I gotta chill my fanboying a little bit. No, it's one hell of a ride. I think you guys will love it. I thought this was an awesome. It's badass woman, badass sword, lots of blood, awesome story. So we've reached my favorite part of the show, where I get to ask you for a little bit of advice for anyone who might be listening and looking to get into this industry. So for anyone looking to, let's say, work with an artist for the first time, as someone who's worked with a lot of artists, what would be your single biggest piece of advice you could offer them to help them make that interaction go smoothly?
Okay, so I think working with artists is the main thing that you have to understand is that it is a collaboration. You aren't working with them because you're the best in the world and they're going to do whatever you tell them to. You're working with them because they are going to bring as much to the book as you are. Some cases more, because you might tell them how many panels that are on a page, but they're going to lay it out. They're going to find out the best way to visually tell that story, and comics are a visual medium. So I think it's the biggest thing is to just make sure that you are respecting the people that you're working with. It's fine to be precious is the wrong word, but it's fine to be committed to what you've written. And if there's something that you are specifically like, okay, this has to happen and it has to happen in this way, that's fine. I'm not saying don't ever do that, but I think it's a collaboration. It has to work both ways. You can't have everything be like that. You can't say every page has to be exactly to the specifications that you've done it at. It's otherwise figure out how to draw and draw it yourself.
Yeah.
That's the only way that it's going to come out the way that you want to see it. And so it's knowing that that's collaboration, and honestly, that is the best thing. I love sending scripts to artists, and when they say, "Oh, I've just tweaked this page, or I've added a panel here, or I've done this, I hope that's okay," and I'm like, "Yeah, of course that's okay, because now you've made it better, but I'll still get credit."
That's smart thinking. I love it. I love it. Yeah. No, that is awesome. Thank you for the sound piece of advice. Now, we always end the podcast by just talking about what you're consuming outside of creating. So, I mean, video games, comics, books, TV shows, movies. What are you consuming?
So at the moment, the video game that I'm playing with my partner at the moment, we're going through Hollow Knight.
Okay.
So we are big kind of like Dark Souls, Bloodborne fans.
Hey, I don't know if you noticed.
I did spot it. I did spot it. Couldn't find a way to work it in, but now we have. But yeah, so I kind of fell in love with those games a couple of years ago, and my partner, like, she watches me play them, and it's just such a great, like, I find it a very calming experience despite the stress.
Isn't it wild?
Yeah, it's very, like, we were watching something the other day, and they were talking about like cozy games, and I think a lot of people immediately go to like Stardew Valley or like maybe like Breath of the Wild and stuff like that, and my immediate thought is like, oh, Dark Souls or Bloodborne. Those are the cozy comforting games that I have.
It's hilarious you say that, because me and my significant other, like, you know, I do a lot of Twitch streaming. When I was saying the job for Cody stuff, that's where I initially started. And me and my significant other met through Bloodborne. She was from California. She seen me stream. She was my mod for a year. And then eventually we were like video chatting, and we were playing Bloodborne like almost every day. And then she ended up moving to Ohio from California. We've been together for almost 4 years now, 4 or 5 years. Like, all through Bloodborne. It's like, all right, it's a love story.
Brings people together. But yeah, so tangentially, so Hollow Knight is kind of in that similar style. Mm-hmm. It's got a, I don't know if you played it or if you played the like Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yeah.
Those games. Hollow Knight has that kind of aesthetic, that kind of style, but it still has that like hard as nails like combat, and if you die, you go back to your bonfire resting point bench, and so that's kind of the thing that's taken over our life at the moment. And then we also just started watching the TV show Severance, with Adam Scott, which is it's on Apple TV, and it's very weird, but in the best possible way. It's essentially about this group of workers who the company that they work for has split their memory. Ooh. So that their outside life and their inside life, they don't remember each when they're in the opposite. So like when they're at work, they have no idea what their life is like outside of it. And so their work life only exists in this windowless, horrific office. And their outside life has no idea what they're doing at work. And so it's this really like interesting, very kind of like slow burn, little drip feeding you information about what's going on. But yeah, it's super good. I think it came out a couple of years ago, and I remember
it's like a wild concept. I know, like when
it's very weird.
You're at a job you hate, you just kind of like disassociate. Like it seems like it's just like a huge play on that, like disassociating.
It's that to the max.
Yeah.
You disassociate so much you forget who you are. But it's
outer body
really,
experience.
It's also really horrific to think about. Like the show starts with a new character like starting to work there, and she keeps trying to escape, but every time she runs out the door, she like comes back through immediately, and you're kind of thinking like, oh, this is a weird, like she can't get out thing, but it's because she runs out, her outside body remembers who she is, and she goes, oh, I've got to go to work, and so she just turns around and walks back in. But the inside body has just this cycling loop of I'm trying to leave and I can't get out.
Oh my god, that is like a mind fuck. Holy crap.
And weirdly, it's didn't realize this until watched the episode, but the first few episodes are directed by Ben Stiller, and it's not like a Ben Stiller style comedy in the slightest. Like there is kind of like humorous elements to it, but it's much darker and like much more kind of like sinister stuff. But yeah, it's really good. I think we're about halfway through the season, so intrigued on where that's going to go.
That sounds good. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, definitely. I would highly recommend it. I don't know how it might end terribly. You can't hold me to that, but the first
it starts good. It starts good.
yeah. It definitely starts good. I know that. No idea how it ends.
So that is awesome, Asa. Thank you so much for swinging by, having this awesome chat with me, giving me the opportunity to read book 1, book 2, and I can't wait to read book 3 when it drops. For everyone that is watching, there are the links in chat. Be sure to sign up today, get this book in your hand, and if anything else, just share it wherever you can. Word of mouth is 100% free. Hope you all have a lovely Saturday. Most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.